No, I didn't get a 9, but what's my score for you?
Here, it's pretty straightforward for me on the assessment side, right?
Uh-huh.
Thank you very much. That is the end of the speaking test.
Oh, that went quickly. Thank you.
Okay.
So now we're gonna assess me.
Yes. Okay, so you're pretty advanced, so the examiner was sort of debating you a bit. So we'll start from the beginning then, okay? So that first section, did you feel nervous? You're speaking pretty quickly with that first section.
I felt excited, yes.
Yeah.
Nervous at the same time, yeah.
Yeah, that's it. So that's why for the people taking the exam, I mean, that first part is really for you. I mean, everyone can answer the question, what's your name? Mm-hmm. Tell me about your apartment, or tell me about the school you go to, or what do you do for your work on a daily basis? Mm-hmm. Those are personal questions, right? Mm-hmm. Those aren't, or in the strategy anyways, you don't really want to think of those as being assessed. It's more for you, so you can kind of calm down and get into exam mode. You saw that for you, because you're obviously a high-level candidate. When you were speaking too much, what happened? Or not speaking too much, but when you extended your conversation, what happened?
You not stopped me, but you moved on to the next topic.
That's it. And did that make you think like, oh, he doesn't like what I'm saying?
No, I know that. Well, at least you already gave me a prep of how the exam is going to be.
Yeah.
Yes, I kind of expected that. So yeah.
And the timing, you saw that we have a countdown timer over here. And we were exactly on time. So the reason that is happening is because we need to stay on time, right? We said it's going to be a 14-minute interview. We started at we ended at 14:32 and we started at 32. So we were like exactly on time, just like the real exam. Mm-hmm. For that first part, like I said, it's personal topics, right? So we talked about art. But before I jump into kind of my part, what was your kind of perception of that question about art?
The thing is, art is very general. And so I broke it down into, because you said if I like art, in my head, I had to define what art really is for me. Mm-hmm. So that's why I answered that way.
Yeah, so I've got a tip for all of you out there and for you as well. Mm-hmm. Be positive. So we saw 3 times, I think, during this exam that when the answer was no for you. Mm-hmm. So one of them was, have you ever painted a picture, or would you buy a painting for a friend? Mm-hmm. The answer was no.
Yeah.
And then there's this pause. Yeah. Because when you say no to questions like this, you're limiting the language that you can actually use, right? Okay. For an examiner, it doesn't matter for an examiner if you're going to buy a painting for your friend or whatever, right? Like, well, they're not even thinking of the question themselves, or they're waiting to see kind of what you can bring out in terms of language. Mm-hmm. So one of the tips is to say yes to everything, really. Try to think of something positive. It opens up so many kind of avenues of conversation for you. Mm-hmm. Because if you say, okay, so for example, would you ever buy a painting for a friend? No. Okay, what can we talk about now, right? Maybe if you say no and you're waiting, that examiner is going to say, why not? Mm-hmm. Now you've limited yourself to one little avenue of conversation, and the avenue is going to be something like, I don't like paintings, or something like that, right? Meanwhile, if you had said yes, well, you open a lot of different avenues, because you can say, yes, I think for my best friend, I'm going to maybe get him or her a big colorful painting for his apartment. He just moved to a new place, all that type of thing, right? Okay. You don't really talk about the new place. You want to go back to the painting that you think would fit nicely over there. But you see, it's kind of easy to carry on with that topic if you answer positively.
Nice.
Yeah, good. So yeah, that's the pro tip. Be positive.
Be positive.
Which is easy for you, eh? Mm-hmm. Great. As we moved into part 2, so this was interesting because this was a part that we didn't talk about before. Mm-hmm. And do you remember I had to read the instructions 3 times? Yeah. Yeah. And did you see any variation in what I said? It was the exact same script. So that's what happens in the real exam as well, is if you don't understand the instructions, it can be stressful, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's it. So for people out there, if you don't practice, this is the same script that's used like for every exam, right? Now I'm going to give you a topic and what you do. Yeah.
Well, the thing is that when you ask me, do you understand? Mm-hmm. at the back of my head, it instigates some, some idea that maybe I didn't understand. Is that a trick question? Do you understand at the end of the...
It's the exact same question in pretty much every exam.
Okay.
It's all about just getting you ready for part 2.
Okay.
It's just explaining that you're going to have your 1 minute to prepare, here's your topic, and then do you understand? But if you haven't prepared for the exam, and you show up and you're going to figure it out on exam day,
okay,
it can be stressful, right?
Yes.
Because you might not know what the examiner's saying.
Yeah.
And then, instead of being ready with a strategy for that 1 minute of preparation, you're thinking like, oh, I shouldn't have said no. Maybe the examiner thinks I don't know, I don't understand what he's saying or something like that, right? So, so it is part of the strategy of anticipating what's going to happen in the exam. Because rather than even listening to that speech, right?
Yes.
You can start your kind of strategy session going right away. So you get that paper and pencil, you have a minute to get your ideas going, and it would be so much more beneficial, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So same thing at the beginning of the exam. Those first questions right at the beginning are always on the topics of either something about your home, so that can be your hometown like we did, it can be about your apartment or your house, it can be about maybe the town where you grew up, something like that, right? Or it's going to be about your work, or it's going to be about your study. Every single time. So if you know this, well, if the examiner's wearing a mask, even, and you say, oh, I might not understand what he's saying, it doesn't really matter because you know the topic anyways, right? You know what the topic's going to be. And remember, that first part, that's for you. That's for you to calm down and kind of get ready. So part 2 and 3, that's where the real kind of digging in assessment is happening. Part 1, and remember, even part 1, the language that it elicited was what you writing notes too? Yeah, was it personal or general?
It was personal.
It was, because when you're assessing language, that's the way that language builds up, right? So think of a little kid. Think of a okay. So think of like a little kid, like a 3-year-old, a 4-year-old, a 5-year-old. Most of the things that they talk about have to do with themselves, right?
Yes.
That's it, and that's because that's the way that language forms.
Okay.
And that's the way that the exam goes, because you're starting with those kind of personal questions so that the examiner can bring your level.
So more.
That's right. Because let's say you answer those personal ones perfectly, and then those more general ones, that they're not as perfect, or you can't answer those general ones. For the examiner, I mean, he's got a pretty good level of where you are, right? So that would be maybe band 4 or 5, right? And that's how the exam progresses.
Okay.
Is to try to push you and see what your limits are.
Oh.
With the complexity of questions, with eliciting more general responses.
Okay. Because if the test taker isn't able to go to the other or answer the other the next, okay, then it stops there.
Well, the exam continues, but the assessment portion that's what the examiner takes a look at, right? Is to kind of keep testing and seeing how high you can go with the general versus personal language use.
Wow. Good to know.
So you saw that in part 2, where we moved a little bit more into kind of general topics, and then part 3 was more about government and that kind of thing, right? So it was to elicit general language, and you saw that you were trying to bring it back to you and your company, and I stopped you because I wanted you to answer more generally, right? But for an exam taker, if you don't know that, I mean, you'll talk about yourself and your experience and that kind of thing, and for the examiner,
but is that a standard? You stopped me because I was or because this is not the real exam, or that's how the exam is going to be?
That's how the exam's going to be.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah, that's it. And for somebody who takes the exam and they don't know that you do need to get that general language, general ideas out there, especially in part 3, the examiner will keep bugging you, and if you keep saying, well, yeah, because once this happened to me, and once this happened to my sister, and in my family we do this, that exam, you're not giving that examiner much to work with, right? So he's trying to push you to move up, but if you're not giving him that general language, those general ideas, well, you're going to be limiting yourself to probably, it depends on a lot of things, but maybe band 5, band 6. Yeah, regardless of if you're an expert or not.
Okay. What else?
Cool. So, okay. So, part 2, if you don't understand the instructions, it can be stressful. Part 3, you were repeating the questions back to me.
Yeah.
I think I told you not to. So
don't repeat the question.
Yeah, so an example was let me think, I wrote one down here. Well, I mean, from part 1, it was, do you like art? I do like art. But so for me, it's not much to assess, right? Part 3, you repeated the questions back to me as well, and I understand it's because you're thinking of the answer, right? So you're repeating that one back, and it depends on the level. I mean, if you're someone who is trying for like a 7, okay, it gives you some time to think. You know, if you're someone who's trying for a 9, you have to up that strategy, right? It has to be synonyms and antonyms and different ways of saying the same thing.
Okay.
And then building that idea, right?
How do I avoid
doing that?
Yeah.
It depends on the score that you want. It is better to do that instead of doing nothing, I guess. Or instead of sometimes people will sort of repeat the same thing. They'll say like that. I like this, or whatever it is, right? And even that thing, it's better to just do nothing with that, right? So how do you kind of get into your topic? It actually relates to writing. So that's why we start with the writing lessons, is because it links to everything else. And the secret is cohesive devices, right? So when you kind of have your list of cohesive devices, that's what you learn in the program. You use those. It just goes into everything, actually. You'll see it in the reading more, you'll see it in the listening, and you'll use it in the speaking as well. So you could say something like, personally, comma. Oh, no, we're going to use personally in part 3, but anyways. Yeah, generally, don't say comma, but comma in writing. Generally, for politicians who get elected because they're personable, so get elected because they're personable rather than government officials. I said government officials who gain power by having social skills or something. So that's a good way to kind of turn it around, and that's really like high level when you're thinking of that.
Okay.
That's it. In terms of, and that's what to expect in the exam. It doesn't mean like we're really debating. It's just I wanted to push you and see kind of your limits for that.
So the assessor also will see the level already, like on the first, second, third, and we'll see from there if they can debate with, like you can assess right away the level of the test taker.
Yeah, and sometimes it's to confirm a grammar point. So maybe the examiner will say something like, yes, there's a lot of politicians who gain power by having social skills rather than being able to actually do the job. But has this always been the case? And something like that, what grammar theme or what grammar area do you think I'm looking for? If I say, has this always been the case? I want you to answer in the past tense, right? Probably because maybe I'm not sure, or I just want to really kind of dig in and see how strong you are in that sense.
Okay.
Or maybe it'll be like a future tense or something like that. So that can be part of it near the end.
Yeah. Okay. Good to know. Well, I'd like to take the course and hit the 9. I know I didn't get a 9, but what's my score for you?
It's pretty straightforward for me on the assessment side, right? So on my side, you're at a 7.5 overall.
Oh, that's not bad.
It's not bad at all. It's fantastic.
7.5 in immigration is, that's a good score. So
CLB 10, yeah. So it's pretty fantastic. It's So
that's CLB 10, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's
7.5.
So pretty good. But the beauty is really to improve. I mean,
yes. Well, if I want to get a perfect score, maybe 8.5. 7.5 is great for me for because I didn't know how to how the exam is
Yeah.
going to be. But once I prep myself, which we're going to come back like in 1 month, I think, and we'll see from there.
Perfect.
I'm going to get an 8.5. Nobody's
mean,
perfect, but
8.5?
I have seen clients
Yeah.
who got 9s. In speaking.
In speaking.
Yes.
Yeah.
So if I can get 8.5 in 1 month, that would be really awesome.
Yeah,
But,
that's it. It's all about knowing the exam, right? So imagine like the things we just talked about now. If you knew this before taking this one, it's just a different mindset you go into the exam with, right?
Nice.
Yeah.
Right? What I've learned today in like, an hour from you?
Yeah, exactly.
It makes a lot of difference already. So how much more if I take the 60 hours course from you?
Yep.
And so we'll see each other again next month with Kyle Broda and Marjorie Quintos. Bye.
Bye.